when Harris suggested Trump's rallies were boring, he nearly choked on the bait. The refrain, as I said, is she kept baiting him and he kept rising to the bait. So much so that the Kamala Harris campaign is now saying, let's have another presidential debate ahead of the November election. That's how high their confidence level is at the moment. Do you agree with all those who are saying this night belonged to Kamala Harris and Donald Trump was an absolute disaster?
No, I wouldn't say Trump was a disaster. The reason being, if you purely look at it from a debate perspective as to how they performed in terms of points, yes, you would give it to Kamala Harris. But the issue is here, if you look deeply into it, and I don't want to be in an echo chamber where everybody supports and praises Harris, I'll give you a different perspective on this. Harris did a great job of rattling Donald Trump, which we usually don't see in debates. Number two, she put him on the defensive, and she nailed a couple of questions, especially the question of abortion. But if you closely watch the moderators and the media outlet itself, they were being a little too light on Harris. And I will point out examples. Every time Donald Trump tried to even remotely exaggerate, they called it out. And every exaggeration was called a false claim. But what about the false claims that Kamala Harris made? To be honest, she made a few claims like Project 2025. Trump came up with it. He wants to implement it. And in fact, that was a false claim that the moderators failed to point out.
Can I just come in here to play the devil's advocate? The argument, the counter argument to that's being made, which I agree with, is that the one who tells more lies or falsehoods is the one who's going to be fact-checked the most. It's a well-known fact that at least 140 people who are involved in Project 2025 have worked very closely with Trump.
It is true. It is true. But in terms of facts, if you have to look at facts, in June of 2024, Trump had laid out a post on social media where he clearly states that he wants to distance himself from Project 2025. He has nothing to do with Project 2025. In fact, half of the things that is said in Project 2025, he said he does not believe in. So those were documented. So not to call it out was a mistake. And yes, you're right. I mean, if somebody makes multiple false claims, they have to be called out. And I took a note of that. Trump was either interrupted or corrected 11 times during the debate, and Harris was corrected 0 times. Does that mean Harris did not lie at all, did not make a false claim at all, did not exaggerate at all? I don't think so. She exaggerated when it came to Project 2025. She exaggerated when she said Trump left them with the worst unemployment. In fact, you can check this. It is on record that under Trump, the unemployment rate for women and the black community, both of which are communities that people say that Trump hates, women and black community, they both had unemployment rates at a record low under Trump. So to call it the worst unemployment numbers was as an absolute false claim. They did not call it out. IVF, they did not call it out. Charlottesville, which was debunked by Snopes, which is presumably a left-wing organization, was also not called out. So the point that I'm making is, for an average American who watches it, who is politically aware, sees that there is a disparity in the way that both the candidates are treated, then suddenly it would lead to people empathizing with Trump instead of putting him on the defensive, is what I'm saying.
As Dr. Alam says, perhaps a lot can happen even between now and the election in the next 7 to 8 weeks. When there was that assassination attempt on President Biden, everybody thought that Biden had won the election already. And today, a lot of people are saying that Kamala Harris has a clear edge. But does it all boil down to the swing states? Does Kamala Harris have it in her to carry the swing states with her? Ambassador Meera Shankar seems to think that during this debate, Trump was only preaching to the converted. He may not necessarily have managed to change the minds of the fence-sitters in any significant way. What do you make of that? And also, very quickly, how significant is the endorsement from Taylor Swift for Kamala Harris?
That's a lot to unpack. But yeah, starting with the ambassador, I completely agree with the ambassador. What Trump has been doing for the last 8 years, it's been the same thing. For the first 4 years, okay, that approach was good because he had to convert a lot of people. Now, the ultra-conservative, the extreme right, and even the right wing for that matter is converted. He does not have to do the same thing. It's time for him to focus on women. It's time for him to focus on the youth. It's time for him to focus on the independents. He hasn't been doing that. And on the specific question, how it might change in the next 8 weeks, I think it could change at any moment, because if you look back when people started questioning Biden's cognitive ability, Trump's ratings went up, and then Biden made a a good speech a week later, it went up for Biden. And then the assassination attempt of Trump went up for Trump. Biden's withdrawal, suddenly the Democrats are up because of Kamala Harris. So it keeps changing every now and again. At the moment, it's advantage Kamala, but it could change at any point. Coming to Taylor Swift, out of the 283 million followers she has on social media, we'll have to see that she's a global icon. So not all 283 belongs to the US. That's probably about 25-30%. So we could say it's about 70 million, out of which, strangely, if you look at all the stats from the past, most youngsters between the age of 18 to 29 or 18 to 25 for that matter support the Democrats or Joe Biden or Kamala Harris in this election. So it wouldn't make much of a difference, but even a 1% difference makes a huge impact in this election. So I think it all boils down to two things. One is a 6 to 7% of independents, and two is a 7 swing states. This is what it boils down to. It'll be a very, very close election, as I always say.
It's going to be a close election. I think that's one thing we can all agree on. And while the night may have belonged to Kamala Harris, there is still a long way to go. Whoever is going to be elected to the White House at the end of the day will have to carry with them the swing states. And can Taylor Swift's support make a significant difference to Kamala Harris's fate in this election? I guess we will find out on the 5th of November.